Welcome to Materials and Methods Matter. In this episode, we will explore color pencil blending techniques used to render realistic color pencil illustrations. In this video, I will demonstrate a variety of techniques by constructing this color matrix in order for you to experience and see the visual effects of each tool and technique. For this demonstration, I'll be using the Koh-I-Noor Polycolor pencils, and I have chosen to use the dark blue and lemon yellow pencils. I will introduce new materials as we go along. For the matrix layout, I'm using 1-inch squares and laying them out 6 squares across and 3 high. But you can use any size grid you wish. I've started to fill in our color matrix by adding a middle value of blue to the top 2 sections of our grid. A good question that comes up is, what is a middle value? Let me explain. As its name implies, it's the middle value. This would be our darkest, this would be our lightest, and the one in the middle would be our middle value. But if we have a 5-value chart where we have the darkest and the lightest, the one still in the middle is the middle value. We normally work in odd number of values. Next, we want to fill in our lemon yellow in the remaining squares at the bottom. The next step is to then blend the yellow in the middle section here. So we want to go ahead and blend our yellow over the top of the blue. And again, not pressing too hard, just making a nice blend. We're then going to work with all these sections with different materials and different techniques. So when we finish this, we will have, or this will be the resulting look of our chart. So we'll have our light, our blue, we're going to have our green, and then we're going to have our yellow. Okay, now we're ready to begin filling in our matrix. We're going to start here on the far left, and our first squares here are reserved for our mass tone. This is our darkest value. So we're going to fill in our darkest value just by bearing down. This is what we call saturated color. Next, we'll switch to our yellow and make this nice and bright. And you can see the difference already just from here to here. You can see that we have a darker, more saturated color. It's always good to know what the saturated color of your pencil is. Now, once we've done this one, we now want to saturate this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go over this mixture of blue and yellow with my yellow pencil, the lemon yellow. A faster process because we already have a lot of color already laid down. And so now we have our saturated color. Next to it we have our mid value. So this already tells us a lot about these colors. Now before we go on, the colored pencil will always pick up color. So it's best to clean it off by using a paper towel, so that when I go on to, if I went back to here and colored it in, I would not leave any green streaks or whatever color is picked up there. Next, I'm going to use a white colored pencil. And the first thing we're going to do is work with our blue. You can see how the white, by burnishing with the white, it is of course creating a tint. One of the things that it also does is by burnishing, it also increases the intensity. Where normally when you add white to a color, it makes a tint, makes it lighter, and kind of decreases the intensity. So it depends on the type of colored pencil you're using. This white tends to be a little bit harder. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wipe that off before I proceed to my green. You can see the difference. Bright yellow, green, our mid value, and our tint. Again, wipe off the pencil, and then let's go ahead and do our yellow. Yellow's, you're not going to see as much on the yellow because it's already a light color, but it is changing. It is changing the what we originally have down on there. So when I work even with these colors, lighter colors, go in a variety of directions. Just don't go in one direction up and down. Go on diagonals, up and down, whatever it takes to fill in that area. Again, let's wipe off our pencil so it's ready for the next time. Next, I'm going to use a soft white pencil, a pencil that's much softer. And what makes it softer is the wax content. And one positive thing is that we get a lighter value. We get a lighter tint of the color. But one of the drawbacks is that you're going to get a very waxy surface. And what happens when you build up all this wax is that I cannot work on top of this, where this one here I can work on top of. So let's now do our green. But it's good to try various things with your colored pencils. One, so that you see how working with two colors or even just one color, what the effects are going to be by using a variety of tools, color pencil tools, to get the desired effect. And we'll be using this when we do our illustration in a future video. Again, wiping off the pencil. Not as much came off that time, so I'm also going to do my yellow area. And then we'll wipe that off so it's ready for the next time. The next tool I'm going to be using is a colorless blender pencil. This is basically a colored pencil without any color. It is just the material, the wax blend. And you can see when we burnish with the colorless blender how bright it gets when we burnish. What we're doing is we're actually creating somewhat of a glaze color. We call it glaze color, which is always intense, transparent. The only drawback with a colorless blender is that in burnishing, it actually flattens the texture of the paper. Again, wipe off your pencil before we go on to the next color. When you're burnishing, what's happening is it's basically taking whatever color is there and mashing it down, compressing it with the blender. Again, we're going to wipe off our pencil. You can see some of the color that came off. Now, if I didn't wipe this off, in fact, sometimes you even want to run it through a sharpener to get it off, because if you don't, it's going to translate over into here and we'll end up with green streaks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to burnish in my yellow. And you can see here near the top where I got close, I actually pulled some of the green down into my yellow. It's one of the things we always have to watch out for when we're working with lighter colors and dark blends, because once that is there, you cannot get it off. It's part of the drawing. Our last segment here of colors is reserved for another tool, which I'll be using is a alcohol-based marker. Alcohol-based markers normally have two different tips. This is the Spectra AD. It has a tri-nib on this side and then a brush nib on this side, which is very convenient. It's like painting. One of the nice things about these markers is that they are refillable, so I could, when this runs dry, I can use the refill to refill it. In using the blender, the alcohol actually works with the wax, and you can see it gives me a nice painterly effect. It actually melts down the wax. And so since I'm in a geometric shape, I'm going to use the flat nib. What's nice about having a sharp edge is I can get in around these sharp edges. Now, since I'm going from here to here, this has already got blue in it, so I am not going to clean the marker, but I will show how to do that because it's necessary when you're going to lighter colors. But you could see the difference in the effects. The first thing we want to do is wipe off our marker. You can see that we picked up a lot of residue, the color. Now, even though the tip is somewhat stained, it's still clean because you can see nothing's coming off. Now we can go ahead and fill in our yellow area. Again, wipe off the marker. Now over here where we use the waxy pencils, I mentioned that we cannot draw over the top of it. But if you use the alcohol blender over the top of this, this will actually reduce the amount of wax or the glossiness of the wax and its resistance to allowing you to add more color. So I can actually reduce that down. It'll also smooth out that color too. So again, you can see how much I picked up on there, and so we'll clean that off. And this is our finished color pencil matrix of blending techniques. This is a good exercise to evaluate color pencil and color pencil blends prior to an illustration, to see what those effects are in the pencils you've chosen. You don't need to use a large chart like this. A small chart will suffice. Whether formal or informal, it always pays to see what your color pencils are going to do before you use them. Here is the finished colored pencil blending matrix. Let me recap the tools I used and the process. I developed the matrix using the dark blue and yellow Polycolor pencils, then blended them together to get a green. Our first column is the saturated mass tone of the colors and the color mix. The second column represents the half tones. In the third column, I burnished with the Polycolor white pencil. In the fourth column, I burnished with a soft white color pencil. Next, I burnished with a Polycolor colorless blending pencil. And lastly, I used the Spectra AD colorless blender marker. This is a great exercise for evaluating any single color or blended color pencil combinations. Stay tuned for more episodes of Materials and Methods Matter. Materials and Methods Matter was inspired by my book, Making Art, Materials and Techniques for Today's Artist. For more videos on Materials and Methods Matter, as well as lesson plans and other instructional videos, visit Thalo.com.